Am I really going to quibble that the Jazz were ranked 4th in best assets? Yep, I am. It's next. Plus, Ben Anderson rejoins for the interview series on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider, and this is Locked On Jazz. On today, the great Eric Pincus, one of the best cap guys out there, ranks the best assets of all teams in the NBA, and the Jazz come up 4th behind the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Knicks. And I quibble with this. I also think it's a super interesting question on what you have to pay to win as you look at the other side of this equation and the two teams that actually come out the best in all of this. One of them relates to the Utah Jazz. Then we'll also look at how the Jazz are going to use Kelly Olynyk this year as he continues to be fabulous for Canada in FIBA play. And Ben Anderson joins us for day 2 of the interview series. We'll talk about our bigs. We talked a lot about the wings and the front court in day 1 with Ben Anderson. So that's coming up on today's show as well. As I mentioned, I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz. It's your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen, and thank you to the everydayers out there who tune in each and every day. We are free. We're available on all podcasting apps. We are up on YouTube at Locked On Jazz. 5-star reviews, subscribe, follow. Much, much appreciated by everyone. And I wanted to give a shout out today as I looked at the reviews last night and give a little thank you to some. We've had some recent 5-star reviews on the old iTunes thing, and wanted to just give a thank you, if I may. I really enjoy listening to David's unique take and look at the Jazz. The geeky numbers make it all the better, especially in a day where statistics and analytics are such a vital part of sports. Keep up the great work. And that came in from E. Bardsley. Thank you very much. I appreciate that from E. Bardsley. And the week prior, from somebody who's gave a bunch of initials that didn't seem like anything other than just tapping the keyboard really, really fast. David's simply the best. I look forward to the insight and expertise every day. He obviously is well prepared and has incredible depth and knowledge. Well done. So thank you. Appreciate those reviews very much. And to Buddy Boy 121, who said his dad introduced him to the podcast. I'm glad it can be a family affair. So 5-star reviews, comments, all appreciated. Thank you very much for that. All right, let's get to it. Eric Pincus, who's great. He's one of the best cap guys out there, writes for Bleacher Report. And he looked at the Jazz draft assets and then ranked them in the NBA. Oklahoma City came up 1, Spurs came up 2, Knicks came up 3, and the Jazz came up 4. And if you read it, there were 2 reasons why the Jazz didn't come, I think, any higher than 4. And who really cares if we're 4th? Oklahoma City is loaded with picks. Oklahoma City has their 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30, has all their picks, and has the Raptors 24 protected, has the Jazz 24 protected, 1 through 10, could be a huge win for them there. They have the Heat and the 76ers 25 picks protected. They have the 26 pick of the Rockets. They have the 27 and 29 picks of the Nuggets. Like, it's just ridiculous how many picks they have. So they're unquestionably have the number 1 pick. And really because of the fact that they have the Derek Favors pick for us. The Spurs have 24, 25, 27, and 29. So, and then they have pick swaps on their 26 and 28. And they have the Hawks 24 pick, the Raptors 24 pick protected, or the Hornets 24 and Raptors pick protected. And they have the Hawks pick 25 and 27 for DeJounte Murray. And then the Knicks have just a bunch of protected picks. And they got Eric really, really valued second round picks. And it's an interesting thing to me because Eric really knows what he's talking about. And second round picks have been kind of moved to these like 6 and 7 second round picks. And to me, second round picks aren't worth much of anything because very few second round picks ever become players. So I think very little of second round picks. In fact, when I look at your draft assets, I don't even look at second round picks. They're nice. They can throw into deals. They let people kind of win a press conference. They're not really real. And when I look at the Jazz draft assets and I say, okay, well, our big problem is 2024. Like, we have no picks this year. Our pick is top 10 protected from Oklahoma City. There is some argument we can't trade our own first round pick until we get this pick unencumbered and get it off our books, which is, so this is our blemish on our otherwise perfectly looked at screen. Is this the trade in which we had to get rid of Derek Favors' contract, and Oklahoma City just has us top 10 protected this year, top 10 protected in 2025, top 8 protected in 2026. And then if we're never better than 8, if all 3 of those goes, then it becomes a second round pick. But that means we have to be in the bottom 10 for another 3 seasons. It sure doesn't seem like that's anyone's intention. Now, it might happen, but it doesn't seem to be anyone's intention. And until we cannot trade our own pick, I think until 2028, maybe 2027, depending on the way one of the rules reads. So that's like in 2027, it makes a lot of sense for us to trade our pick. We have Cleveland's 2027. We have the Lakers top 4 protected, and we have the Knicks, and we have the Wolves pick. We don't actually want 4 of the picks in 2027, but that's our one blemish. Otherwise, our draft asset line is actually better, way better than the Spurs. The Hornets 24 and Raptors 24 protected. The Hawks 25 and 27. We've got 3 Minnesota picks still, Cleveland 3 picks, and 1 Laker pick. That's 7 first-round picks compared to the 5 that the Spurs have. I don't care about second-round picks, and we have 2 pick swaps, and they have 2 pick swaps. So I just don't see. I actually think the Jazz have the second best, and the Knicks isn't even close. Knicks have like 80 million second-round picks. I just could care less. So maybe I'm biased on this, but I certainly see the Jazz having the second best set of assets out there. I do think Oklahoma City's set is better, and Oklahoma City's set is better because they have our pick. That's what really puts them over the top. And they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 other people's first-round picks, some of which are protected. We'll see how they all play out. Ours are also very lightly protected, right? So when it's picks we're getting from the Lakers, it's top 4 protected. If it's Minnesota, it's only 1 top 5 protected. Otherwise, like, something goes wrong in Cleveland in 2025, 2026, 2027, or 2028, or 2029, we get it. Like, if Cleveland they shouldn't. They're really good. They have Evan Mobley, Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, but who knows? We get it. If something goes wrong in Minnesota, like Anthony Edwards leaves, in 2025, 2026, 2027, 2027, we get the pick. In 2029, it's just if it's top 5. So I disagree. All right, I think one of the really interesting things for the Jazz this year is how they're going to use Kelly Olynyk. And Ben and I will talk about it a little bit, but if you watch, I'm going to bring it up with Ben, and I don't really love Summer League. I think you guys are aware of that. I think it's wonderfully great fun. Great. Wait, let me rephrase it. I love Summer League. It's super fun. It's great to get the Jones back. I don't take Summer League performances and say, oh, this tells me how a player's going to play in the NBA. What I do take out of Summer League is how coaches are going to coach in the NBA. And if you watch Summer League, particularly in Salt Lake this year and a little bit in Vegas, almost everyone's running big in the high post variations of what Denver's doing with Jokic. Now, no one's Jokic. I was talking to Scott Rogers, our great award-winning graphics guy, and he's like, can Kelly Olynyk be a Walmart Nikola Jokic? And I think the answer is yes. I do think Kelly Olynyk can be a Walmart Nikola Jokic. And I think actually without a point guard, I think you're going to see a lot of teams are playing without a point guard with bigs that can play. Like Boston doesn't really have a point guard. Derek White, maybe. You're going to see, I think, Al Horford playing with a lot of that handle. I don't know how, I don't think Phoenix does it with Devin Booker. I think they actually they just have so many isolation players. I think they just play that way. So I think I think we're going to see a bunch of teams with these bigs that are going to allow kind of the ball movement out of the high post with a big. And I think we're going to see the Jazz do that. And Kelly's doing some of it in FIBA right now. And Kelly's great at it. Like, Kelly's really, really great at this. And what gets interesting about this is it makes Kelly even more integral to what the Jazz are doing if this is a part of their offense. One signature of Will Hardy last year was the willingness to play a multitude of different systems, both offensively and defensively, which a lot of coaches don't like to do. A lot of coaches like to be consistent for 48 minutes. But Kelly's an elite level passer. Like when he has played a lot, he's averaging 4 or 5 assists, 6 assists out of never 5, but out of that post position. And if you actually go back and look at from the kind of when we joked about point Olynyk, right? I tell the funny story about we're in Toronto and we've made the trades and Kelly's like point guard. And if you go look at Kelly in those final games last year, in 24 games last year, he averages 5 assists a game to close the year. He's pretty great, by the way. Final 30 games of the year, Kelly Olynyk averages 14 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists a game. Shoots 52% from the field and 39% from three. This guy really can evolve his game into whatever his team needs. He's doing it for Canada right now, and he is vital. And the other thing on Kelly is plus minus is just good every single night. So I think as we kind of have built these rosters and built these lineups and looked at these things, I think Kelly is going to be a bigger player in some of this than we think. And it might also mean that Kelly starts, right? I mean, we've all decided that John Collins is starting for Kelly. I don't know. Ben Anderson had an interesting conversation about Jordan Clarkson the other day, and both of us just assume he is starting. I've heard a lot of people think he's not. So, interested in your thoughts on that on YouTube as well. Ben Anderson joins us coming up here. Get your thoughts on how Kelly and John Collins work in that. Maybe just Kelly's comes in almost immediately. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Chevy, located in Woods Cross, also in Logan. The Chevy family of trucks. There's the Colorado and the Silverado, and frankly, there's just nothing better. It's Chevy, it's Americana, it's everything that we've known over the years. And then you get that you have the Murdochs, 80 plus years in Utah, giving you the no regrets experience each and every time. And that's what makes the Murdochs so great, is to make sure that you, part of our community, good people. I was actually, we were in Seattle for 2 days, and my wife was talking with someone about, we kind of went by an old place where I had a car deal, and we were just talking about what great people the Murdochs are, and just how fabulous it is to be involved and endorsing a company who is doing good things. We had a great experience last week down there. I was talking to their used sales guy, trying to think about whether I might buy the Ionic 6. I passed again. I think I'll break down at some point, but not yet. That was over at the Murdoch Hyundai. So head over to Murdoch Chevy. If you're going to stop by, please give me an email at dlock09@gmail.com so I can take care of you and get you the VIP experience. Today's show is also brought to you by Intercap Lending. Talk about customer service. That's our guy, Steve Carter. Intercap Lending has been in Utah since 2016 when Josh Romney moved them back into Utah. They are hyper-responsive. They embrace change. They've taken advantage of the borrower experience. And I saw a little note that mortgages have been submitted or back up on the rise. So if you're trying to navigate this interest rate world, Steve Carter is your guy. Give him a call, 385-800-8528. Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. For more information, visit Intercap Lending. Tip of the hat to Intercap. They also do a bunch of great community things over the years. Brock Worthen and Intercap has done amazing things with backpack campaigns and the rest coming in around school, the start of school. They're just such a great member of our community as well. So tip of the hat there. Intercap Lending. Visit them at intercaplending.com or give me an email at dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you in touch with Steve Carter and get you your Locked On Everyday or VIP experience and make sure Steve takes care of you over at Intercap Lending. Day 2 with Ben Anderson. He covers Jazz for KSLSports.com. Does a great job with that. Covers the Jazz as well as everybody else with Jake every day on KSL Sports Zone. So super to have him aboard. Great Jazz coverage, one of the many. Thanks to Tony Jones and Sarah Todd who joined us earlier. Thurl Bailey next week. For you, Tim Lacombe. Jazz pre-halftime post-game radio will join us week after that. And then I think we get awfully close to training camp right around there. And tip of the hat to the Jazz and the Clippers for their upcoming event supporting Maui. That's going to be a wonderful event. All right. I love Seth Partnow's Tears. I don't know if you get into that, The Athletic. Like, it's a basketball junkie's dream come true. I did 17 shows on it, I think. I find the two most intriguing are kind of like the right below superstardom, top 11 into the top 11. I find the top 11 really boring. I know who they are. And then I find the what he called the tier 3, who's breaking through. So who's Devin Booker of last year, right? To me, there's 4 guys this year that could kind of break through. LaMelo Ball, Lauri Markkanen, Anthony Edwards. He had Don at tier 3. I thought Don was about as good as he could be last year. Like, that was an all NBA first team season. So I'm not sure what else he's supposed to do. So I think that's kind of unfair to have Don there. What is your thought if Lauri has that next step in him to go from 20-ish to 15-ish to 10-ish?
Passing is going to be a big part of it. And I think you've seen some of that in FIBA. That's been a little promising, but he's also had the ball in his hands so much that he's going to rack up assists just because he has the ball and he has to pass at some point. If that will improve, that will be there. I think, honestly, just having a little bit better defensive reputation, because I already think he's actually a much better defensive player, and his numbers at the rim were actually pretty incredible. So if he does that and then, can space that out a little bit more, I think that's going to continue to help him. But man, it's continuing to take the right shots. I mean, he was so good offensively last year. It's almost hard to say, like, what are you willing to give up to get more out of? Like, are you going to give up some of the efficiency to get a little bit more out of him? Can he do both? Can he just keep rising at both and be that, 3-level scorer that just is, arguably the most efficient in the game outside of Nikola Jokic, who's the best player on the planet? It's pretty unique what he's able to do. And I don't think he's that far off from being one of those top 11, 15 guys. And sometimes it might just be wins. It might just be about winning.
So I would put 2 things in that. One is isolation play. First half of the season, when I think he was very selective of when he went ISO, was unbelievable. And second half, he was actually like 87th out of 90 of players in isolation. So to me, that's Will started just giving him the ball at 17 feet and saying, go score. And that's hard. Like, that's really, really hard. And maybe that's passing too. That's, to me, kind of the next step in there of like, and then his clutch numbers were really pretty good. So it's hard to kind of dig into that. I didn't ever break down his clutch numbers by season. And, obviously we go back to where you and I started, having Mike Conley early in the season made sure you got the ball in better spots. In the second half of the season, you had to just go get the shot yourself. But I think some of that being able to go get the shot yourself stuff, I think would be what I would ask for. I don't think I'm actually willing to give anything else up. I would like all the other stuff to go with that. Yeah.
I mean, and we've seen the highest of highs, which I'm a big believer in. I need to see that you can get 40. I need to see that you can get 48 against terrible teams. And he can do it. He can do it. I believe that, your ceiling at your brightest spots will show itself if you're the real deal. And he has shown it. And then that consistency. But I mean, how many stretches last year was he averaging 30 points a game for a long stretch? I mean, very unique numbers. I think he's that good.
One of my biggest memories from a media standpoint last year was the show I did with you and Jake, where we ran back through Lauri's career. And we're like, hey, this actually, there were flashes of this a multitude of times. And so what's interesting to me is now that he's done what he's done, and you see the flashes, that makes sense. There is this actually logical next step. It's not when I hear people saying is John Collins going to do what Lauri Markkanen did? And I understand the wishful thinking, but that to me feels like wishful thinking. This actually feels like a reasonable, logical conversation that, okay, wait a sec. Lauri was developing. He got stymied by being in Chicago and screwed. He got traded to Cleveland. Utah then let him tap back into all the things he showed some signs of. Well, then he's still on an upward trajectory, and there should be another step or two. This feels like a very reasonable idea to me that Lauri Markkanen could make the Devin Booker jump next and be thought of as a top 15 player in the NBA next year.
Yeah, I agree. I have a theory in the NBA. I don't have as many as you do, I don't think, but when I see a rookie, I want to see a rookie who actually plays accidentally breakthrough, because I don't think a lot of rookies know what they're doing. But accidentally over 82 games or 70 games, one night you should be able to do what you're going to do really well in the NBA just on accident.
Oh, I like that.
Walker Kessler did it his first night. So it was okay, this kid's going to be great. This kid's going to be just fine. And then you know what? Ochai had a couple of them. And I would have been a lot lower on Ochai had we not seen Chicago. I think there was a game in Houston that we saw enough nights where it was okay, I totally get it. I totally get where that kid heads. Lauri, to your point, has done it every stop of the way and has done it for longer stretches, which makes me believe that, yes, it's real and yes, it's going to continue. That was one of my big questions this offseason, and then nothing he'd done internationally says it's going to slow down at all.
That's a good point. All right, so let's go to Kelly Olynyk, who might be like my most point Kelly. It might be one of my most favorite players to watch. It's not surprising me that if you look back at Kelly's career, he just kind of continually is positive in the plus minus. How do you use Kelly Olynyk on this roster?
I think Kelly Olynyk might be on the floor at the 9-minute mark of every game. I don't think he starts, and that does buck a little bit of our trend of yesterday talking about Jordan Clarkson starting 61 games, then going back to the bench. That will happen with Kelly Olynyk, and he's just going to have to deal with that. He's going to go back to the bench this year. But I think he might be on the floor 8 minutes, 9 minutes, and then meaning 3 minutes into the first quarter, and getting a lot of opportunities to play in place of, John Collins subs out, and then John Collins comes back in place of Lauri Markkanen or Walker Kessler, and then you pair those two together in the backcourt. But I think he's super critical, and I think he's going to get a ton of minutes. And his floor spacing, his passing, his understanding of how to win games, or at least how to play the game, is going to be really crucial, especially if you are playing any of the rookies, because he will be really beneficial to either Taylor Hendricks or Keontae George.
So I want everyone to realize this about Kelly. He doesn't rebound great, whatever. The guy's been in the league now for 11 years? I think this will be
This will be his 11th, yeah.
11th year. He, in all but 2 years of his entire career, his team has been better when he's on the floor than off the floor. And those are some good teams.
No, we could look back and say the Jazz didn't get equal value for Bojan Bogdanovic, if you think that's the case, because Bojan's a pretty special player. Bojan is playing on a Detroit team that wants to trade him and couldn't. And I find a playoff team that can't use Kelly Olynyk for 10 minutes a night in the postseason.
Right. No.
I mean, he can play on every playoff team, I think, for 10 minutes a night. And those guys are extraordinarily valuable. And if we want to have a conversation about Howard Isley at some point, we can. But having guys you can play in the playoffs off the bench for 10 minutes are actually pretty valuable.
Hopefully you're following it at KSLSports.com. Ben has compiled the top 50 in honor of the 50th season. Ben's compiled the top 50 players of all time in Jazz. For those who want to understand, Howard Isley was rated 43rd. Rodney Hood and Ricky Rubio, who actually started games, were 50 and 49. And even Bobby Hansen, who's 48 and started a lot of games. I love Howard Isley. He's actually one of my favorite people to see around the league. The dude had the easiest gig in the history of the NBA. The only job easier in sports was Peyton Manning's backup, because you actually just never played. Howard Isley somehow has gone into the annals of Jazz history as some hero. Is Jim Less 36th on this list? Is Scotty Roth up? Okay, sorry. I love Howard, but he's he
benefited from right player, right time, for sure.
Yeah, these 7 players ranked behind Howard on the top 50 list all should be ahead of him.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a good list. Go check it out at KSLSports.com with Ben Anderson. You gave your theory, which I love. That's super good. I will steal that. I will call it the Ben Anderson theory. I'll give you credit. I'm at a point in my career where I can do that. I'm no longer as insecure as I once was.
Appreciate it.
I will share with you my single theory of the value of Summer League, because there's only one to me that exists out there, and it's not player development, when we come back with more with Ben Anderson here on Locked On Jazz today on our offseason interview series. Today's show is brought to you in part by FanDuel. Special deal going on right now. A lot of fun stuff at FanDuel. So let me tell you about what we have for you with FanDuel. The NFL season is here. So here's the deal. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. The math on that's good, everybody. If you haven't figured that out, that's an odds you like. That's guaranteed. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Information that would have been better for me before I bought that. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use. You can get everything you need, from spreads to player props and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer you don't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL, the official sportsbook of Locked On. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. Also, NBA odds, over-unders, all those things are up on FanDuel as well. Oh, I keep adding Ben Anderson back to the stream, but not switching the graphics, so then he doesn't show up. So I actually think the only value to Summer League, this is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but other than marketing, is watching what people run. And every team in the league ran a post offense as though they had Nikola Jokic in the summer league this year.
Yeah.
Almost every single one. So I'm wondering if we're going to do the same thing with Kelly Olynyk. Right? Like Kelly Olynyk's skill set he's not Nikola Jokic, but a lot of his skill set is actually, he's not this guy's Larry Bird passing MVP. But like I could see us have an entire offense that runs through Kelly Olynyk at the high mid post.
I actually thought that was a guy that maybe the Nuggets would go after last year at the trade deadline, because you could have not, he's not a seamless transition from Jokic to Kelly Olynyk, but he's pretty darn good.
Thomas Bryant didn't work out for them?
Yeah, right. Exactly. So I thought as they were looking for a backup big man, it was pretty obvious they needed one. Maybe they didn't. Jeff Green seemed to do okay in their run through the finals, but I thought that was a name I was going to keep an eye on for them.
So you mentioned it earlier that Lauri Markkanen's rim defensive numbers are great. Is there any reason he should be the backup center?
I hadn't thought about it. Yes,
right.
Yes, there is. Because there's a guy named John Collins on the roster.
Right. So my backup lineup is Lauri, John Collins, Ochai Agbaji, Keontae George, Colin Sexton. The floor's wide open. That's some sort of a second unit, and Colin and Keontae can just come, or Talon can just come downhill because it's 5 out.
Yeah, I think John Collins is your backup center. Again, we talked about the value of Kelly Olynyk, and his ability to play both positions in the front court is super valuable, I think. But yeah, you can bring him in and he can play alongside Lauri. He can play alongside John Collins. My only question is, can John Collins and Walker Kessler play together? That will be a big question mark. If they can, that's a huge plus, because then you have, however many minutes a night, 96 or whatever, between all your 4 front court big men, or where you want to play Lauri, if you want to move him down to 3 and give him some minutes at the 4 occasionally. You can be really good. I mean, that could be a playoff team rotation.
It's an interesting question on a bunch of these things, on how they all interplay and how they work and what they do and how we play, right? Like, I feel like Will had his choice. He switched 5. He wants to play like a switching 5 defense and a 5 out offense. And we have Walker. And so you're not going to do that because Walker's great at what he does. And so, one thing we did last year I thought was interesting is we played like half the game drop big, pick and roll heavy kind of, and then the other or pin down with Lauri. And then the other half of the game, not totally 50-50, we would play 5 switching 5 switch 5 out and play a totally different style. And that's interesting to me. Like, I don't know. There aren't a lot of teams that try to switch their styles in the middle of games that dramatically. That's a tribute to Will that he's trying to do it. And it's interesting if that's something that will make us better because it has a versatility of the way we play.
Do you drop it all with John Collins?
No, I don't think so. I
don't think so. But then can he stick with the guys? Those are the questions. I honestly, I've watched John Collins. I listened to the Locked On Hawks podcast after the trade, and they praised how much better he was defensively than his reputation. He's probably the 3rd best defensive player on the team last year, and they were really pretty high on him. And I just haven't watched enough. And, they were playing with a guy with Clint Capella, who is going to stylistically change what you do. And by the way, some of the worst defensive, or maybe the worst defensive guard in the NBA. I mean, all those things hurt. So how does that change once he gets to a team that cuts a little slack for him?
I talked to a coach in the NBA about John Collins. I thought he was really interesting. He said he's the ultimate tweener. And so you just got to figure out how you're going to use him. And his point a little bit was Atlanta didn't have much flexibility. And his point was, like, if you look at him offensively, he's a great pick and roll runner. He's an incredible athlete. He gets over the rim. He's an awesome rim finisher. He really can play 5 offensively. You can slip him on some picks. If you switch him to a little guard, he can actually take advantage of in the post. There's so many things he does well there. But he says, hey, offensively, he's probably best at a 5, because when you play him at a 4 and he spots up shooting, he's not shooting great. And they said defensively, he's just not big enough to play the 5. And so he's just caught in between. He's an offensive 4 and he's a defensive 5, and he's a pretty good defensive 4 and he's a pretty good offensive 5. And so maybe with this, with this Kelly Olynyk, who kind of plays all these things, and Lauri, who plays all these things, Will's going to be able to find a way to use John Collins in a manner that you're actually accentuating all of his positives each time he's on the floor. I don't know entirely how you do that, but Will has done a good job of tapping into guys' superpowers. And so it's like, what position, how do you work these guys? Do you play Olynyk, Collins, Markkanen together? Do you play Kessler, Olynyk, Markkanen like we did last year? Do you play Kessler, Collins Markkanen, like Kessler Markkanen was really good together, and you play speed around that. Like, it's super interesting to me on how they try to materialize this and how they use those rotations.
Agreed. And again, I think I would go back to, you start John Collins at the 4. He comes out early for Kelly Olynyk. And then when Kessler comes off the floor, John Collins comes back in. And then I think you do have your ability to switch those guys around. And then you just got to figure out what you're doing at the 3. But that would be my best guess. And I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think you can get the minutes for everybody. But that just, when I try and work it out in my head, that's just where I land every single time.
Well, you go back to something Quinn did with Rudy and Conley, was what he started playing them in 3 stints in a half. So they would come out at the 5 or 6 minute mark. They would circle back at the end of the first quarter and play against second tier groupings from about the 2-minute mark of the first quarter to about this 7-minute mark. And then they would come back for the final 4 minutes, right? So they're 3 stints and a half is what that means, rather than, like your best players often play 12 and then 6. They play all 12 of the first minute, and then they play 6 minutes to close the set. That's 2 stints. It comes out to 36 minutes. I do think that if you're going to start John Collins, he's a 3-stint player. And I 100% agree with you that, like, let's find a way to get John Collins minutes against backups. Because from a big picture standpoint, you made the comment that that's a playoff rotation. The scenario I have where I think the Jazz make the playoffs or have a really successful season is that they're throttling people as substitutions start, that they can stay close enough at the start. But then as the game rolls on, they just start to kind of beat up on people, and they have all these groupings that they can kind of find the right matchup on the right night. And then they're probably holding on for dear life in the final 5 minutes when the other team's final 5 is maybe better than our final 5.
But 48 minutes of solid play is going to win you a lot of games. The Suns can't give you 48 minutes of solid play.
No.
Not at every position. And they're really good. Denver, I'm not sure can give. Is Reggie Jackson any good? I don't know. Probably not. But can you get 48 minutes of solid play out of that rotation? I don't know. The Jazz can, basically at every position.
You're getting into one of my theories.
Let's hear it.
240.
Yeah.
First thing I check on every team at the beginning of the year is, do they have 240 minutes played?
Yeah.
Like that's the question. Denver has the best starting 5 in the NBA, but when Konkar and Huff and Holiday, not named Drew, and Reggie Jackson are in your rotation projected, that's probably not 240 anymore.
Hey, can I derail this really quickly?
Yeah.
I've got a question for you.
All right. I like it.
What's the gap between Jokic and the second best player in the NBA, and how does that compare to the gaps in previous years of the best player to the second best player in the league?
Too good a question for me to answer today. I'll have to chew on it and answer it to start the next day with Ben Anderson. How's that? Give me a second to chew on it. We will answer that question as we open up day 3 with Ben Anderson tomorrow or on Friday on Locked On Jazz. Ben Anderson, catch him at KSL Sports. Catch him at Ben Hoops. Catch him with Jake. That's a brilliant question. My brain's churning. I'm thinking Magic and Larry were really close. Michael and Carl were kind of close for a while. Giannis is the second best player in the league. Woo! Comment in the comment section of YouTube. We'll answer that question when we come back, talk the league, as well as more Jazz items on our final day with Ben Anderson. He is over at KSLSports.com and KSL Sports Zone. I'm David Locke. Thanks to the Everydayers for being a part of it. Thank you very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen.